Hi guys, welcome to our daily encounter. Today we read about three kingdoms that are told they were going to be placed under judgment. We have Babylon, Philistia, and Moab. And all three of these have a characteristic in common, and that is pride. Babylon was prideful in probably the most highest sense of pride that there could be, in that they made themselves or felt like they could be equal to God himself. It says in verse 12 of chapter 14 of Isaiah, "How you have fallen from heaven, O star of the morning, son of the dawn. You have been cast down to the earth, you who have weakened the nations." Verse 13, "But you said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God, and I will sit on the mount of assembly in the recesses of the north." Verse 14, "I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, and I will make myself like the Most High." You can't boast much more than that. Feeling like they could become equal with the Most High. They had trampled underfoot all the other nations, and the other nations had their gods that they served, and that caused them to be very prideful. And they said, you know what? We trampled over these other people with these other gods. Surely we can take over the God of Israel. And so they became very prideful. Also, Philistia became prideful, especially once King Ahaz had died. It says in verse 28 of chapter 14, it says, "In the year that King Ahaz died, this oracle came. Do not rejoice, O Philistia, all of you, because the rod that struck you is broken. For from the serpent's root a viper will come out, and its fruit will be a flying serpent." So don't be prideful just because you saw King Ahaz die and think, well, now we'll really reach the heights of success. He says, no, out of that is going to come destruction. But then the same is true with Moab. In chapter 16 and verse 6, it says, "We have heard of the pride of Moab, an excessive pride, even of his arrogance, pride, and fury. His idle boasts are false." So Moab had become very boastful, and probably in connection to the wealth that they had, the abundance of agriculture that they had. But in either case, it was because, or they had become very prideful in their wealth and their affluence. So in all three of these kingdoms, we see pride. And it ought to cause us to kind of sit back and think about this sin of pride. It's a very sinful thing to be prideful. Proverbs chapter 16 talks about pride coming before destruction. 1 Corinthians chapter 12 1 Corinthians chapter 10 talks about, let him who thinks he stand take heed, lest he fall. Pride can be really a setup for a person's failure. And it's a very grievous sin before God. In Proverbs chapter 6, it's at the top of the list. And so haughty eyes is something that the Lord certainly despises. And it's no wonder that God has set up the whole plan of salvation around humility. Realizing that we're sinners, realizing that we can't have a relationship with God based on our own merit and our own good works, but that we need to rely on someone else, on Jesus Christ, to approach God. That takes humility. And it's the way that God has set it up, because he does despise pride so much. And we can understand why. He's the greatest conceivable being in existence. And for mere man to, beat his chest and be prideful, we could see how that would be something very much despised by the Lord. But nonetheless, pride is a very serious thing, and it's something that we ought to look out for. It's one of those subtle sins that kind of take over us, maybe sometimes gradually, and we don't even see it coming. Maybe it just comes from being prideful over our ability to overcome certain sins that other people struggle with. Maybe we become prideful because of our wealth or our looks or our success in business. It could be a lot of different things, but inwardly we just become more and more prideful. And before we know it, we begin to despise others, look down on others, and maybe even rejoice in in the failures of others because it makes us look better. There's a lot of ways that pride can be manifested, but in whatever way it's there, it's something that is very much looked down on by the Lord. So as we do our reading today, we should really contemplate and think about and reflect on this sin of pride and do some introspection and see, is there any pride in our hearts? Are there times when we look down at other people in a condescending way? Are there ways that we pride ourselves in ways that are not proper, in ways that would be displeasing to the Lord? That's something that we should think about and bring to the Lord if we see any evidence of that there. So with that, guys, I do thank you for watching the video today. Hope you guys have a great day. Love you guys. God bless.